All right, Robby, what's on your radar?
So who is the U.S. angry with? Is it the Russian government, in particular its leader, Vladimir Putin? Or is it the very concept of Russia and the Russian people themselves? Because I have to say, it's starting to feel like the latter, and it's disturbing. The sanctions, weapons sales, oil embargo are having negative effects on the people of Russia, but these measures can be defended on grounds that they're aimed squarely at the government in actuality. But what about the gradual cancellation of everything in the Western world that is Russian in origin? People are dumping out vodka. Why? How can we describe this as anything other than rank xenophobia? And I'll give you an example. The Cardiff Philharmonic Orchestra was scheduled to have a concert featuring the music of Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky. Now, I know very little about classical music, but even I know who Tchaikovsky is. He was a famous 18th century composer whose best works, Swan Lake, The Nutcracker, the 1812 Overture, are still popular today. Tchaikovsky, though, was Russian, and thus the Philharmonic has decided that in light of recent events, it would be wrong to play his music. Seriously, the composer has been dead for 130 years. Now he's not just dead, he's canceled. Here's the statement. Quote, "The decision on this concert was very much based on here and now. A member of the orchestra, his family, is directly involved in the Ukraine situation, and we are trying to respect that situation during the immediate term. There were also 2 military-themed pieces as part of the program that we felt were particularly inappropriate at this time. We were also made aware at the time that the title Little Russian, Symphony No. 2, was deemed offensive to Ukrainians." How is Tchaikovsky offensive? He has nothing to do with Vladimir Putin or the war in Ukraine. On the contrary, he was an opponent of Russian nationalism who loved Ukraine. As my colleague at Reason, Billy Binion, writes, Tchaikovsky, quote, inserted themes from Russian folk tunes, but imbued his music with the operatic and balletic lyricism more characteristic of the works of his neighbors. Perhaps more importantly, his disposition for an international musical style informed the ways in which he shared it with the world. In an era when many Russian composers siloed themselves off from the globe, Tchaikovsky sought to be part of it. During a 3-month tour in 1888, he became the first Russian composer to personally unveil his music to Western Europe. Note as well that piece of music that's specifically bothering everyone right now is the 1812 Overture, because it's about Russia and it's about war. But even that's missing some really important context, so let's focus on the overture, which you've probably heard, even if you don't know what it's called. So listen. Familiar, right? The piece famously includes the sounds of cannon fire, and yes, it celebrates a great Russian military victory. But the victory is over Napoleon, who invaded Russia after conquering much of Europe. In their conflict with Napoleon, the Russians were the good guys. They were the invaded party. They were in the position Ukraine is in right now. So it gets even stupider. The canceled program was also going to feature Tchaikovsky's Symphony No. 2, which was based on Ukrainian folk songs. It's insane. Note that the Philharmonic in Wales is not the only music hall to cancel Tchaikovsky recently. The Chubu Philharmonic in Japan is doing the same thing. So here's my question. At what point would it have been appropriate to cancel art and music by Muslims in the wake of 9/11? Didn't political leaders in both parties, including quite famously President George W. Bush, warn us not to succumb to knee-jerk fear and hatred of people whose only crime was sharing a religion or ethnic background with the terrorists? Weren't we all supposed to recoil in horror at the idea of treating others like that? So what has changed exactly?
Russians are white.
That is certainly what I'm hearing many conservatives saying. I don't know if that's the case.
Yeah, if they're white.
It's not racist because they're white people.
Right.
Yeah, take that, lib.
I don't know if I can follow that.
No, they're saying it's okay to practice this. I mean, I'm seeing people on the right saying this.
It's justified.
It is okay to practice this entire moral group sanction against all Russians because
white people aren't marginalized.
Liberals don't have a problem doing that to white people, whereas if it was Muslims, then it flags their kind of racist.
You know what this reminded me of?
But I don't know.
Do you remember who got canceled after 9/11?
The Dixie Chicks.
Cat Stevens.
Oh, yeah. I don't remember that, actually.
Cat Stevens converted to Islam. And so he was basically kind of drummed out of society. Yes, the Dixie Chicks.
Right. White people.
All
white people, for saying that they were embarrassed that Bush was their president, which is just voicing a feeling that
I think what gives that theory more credibility is that there is, frankly, a lot of just like across the board demonization of like whiteness in kind of progressive social justice-y activism circles, like the kinds of seminars Ramba DiAngelo type people put on. I don't think that's broadly representative of how like liberals think about things, but it is out there.
Right, and remember, we also blocked a mosque from being built in Manhattan.
Yeah, right. And I don't want to say there was no actual bigotry or reprisals against Muslims. Certainly there was, but
we now recognize that was
people.
wrong.
We recognize it was, and it was at some level it was discouraged, right, by the
left,
people.
But it was the right that was mostly doing it after 9/11.
It was the right mostly doing it, although Bush said not to do it.
You might have said not to do it, but the culture still did it. People within the culture.
But I felt like it was people doing it, whereas now it's the elites are doing it, or the elites are giving absolute permission to do it. This is an orchestra. This is as elite as you can get the symphony, right? You can't get more liberal elite than this, and they're saying, now would just not be the right time to have a mosque next to our. Like that's the equivalent of what they're saying, right?
And they also canceled the Canadians, right? Didn't they cancel like this 14-year-old Russian prodigy? Or I don't know if he was 14, but who specifically and explicitly condemned Putin.
Yes. So I was going to talk about that, but then I saw that, and then I could not construct whatever the right Google search terms were to find that. It was one of those things that came across my feed,
because there's
I could not find
so
it
much
again.
canceling of
There's
Russians.
so much canceling. Yeah, that was a outrageous story.
Canceling is just going down a river.
And who was it that they?
You can't even see,
Which university canceled was it an author or somebody that they were saying, we're not going to study that person because that person's Russian, and it's also from way back in the.
Yeah,
I forgot which university.
That
it was
happens so many times now. We couldn't even. We'd need more than to find. Universities will cancel any speaker for any reason.
Tolstoy can survive the Cold War, but not.
Not this Cold War.
Of Ukraine.
Yeah.
But isn't that funny how because the cancel culture is so misinformed, oftentimes about who they're canceling, like. Tchaikovsky is not a Russian nationalist, loved the Ukraine. The 1812 Overture is about a Russian defensive victory against aggression. It's just, but I guess people don't know that, or
there are Ukrainians who hate being called Little Russians, because that's a phrase that a lot of Russians would use for Ukraine. But that aside, this is counterproductive, deeply counterproductive in the sense that you could be appealing to the Russian people and saying, we're one people. Mm-hmm. Why do not support this invasion.
Right.
We're not your enemies. Instead, they're actively saying, no, we're your enemies.
Yeah.
We need Hug a Russian Day.
We do. That's right.
Well, we can declare today.
Let's declare
Hug a
today and tomorrow. Why not? We'll throw in tomorrow too.
Yeah.
Well, we're looking forward to your radar coming up next, Ryan.